too late now. You've been arrested. And the reason you've been arrested is because you gave all the wrong answers out there on the road.
It's late at night. You're sober, but you've been pulled over by the police, and they start asking questions. What do? Welcome to the Biker Rebellion. I'm your host, Ginger, here with founding member of the Biker Lawyers, Pete Leehey. Recently, we were asked a hypothetical scenario about dealing with the cops when you get pulled over. Let's get into it. Pete?
So here's the situation. The biker has been pulled over by the law.
Okay.
He hasn't been drinking.
Okay.
But a key point here is he has smoked some weed. Not today, but he has. So now the cop is approaching him. And as the cop comes up, they work their way through the legitimate part of the stop, which is
license, proof of insurance, and registration, please. Yes, sir.
Then the cop starts in with,
Have you been drinking, son?
and this is where anybody who's pulled over needs to make a judgment call, because that is a question that is not related to the stop that's been made.
Sure.
Let's just say he was pulled over for speeding. Have you been drinking is not a legitimate part of a speeding offense. So when the cop asks that question, even if you haven't been drinking, you need to shut it down, because if you start answering questions, that's consent for the cop to keep going and to extend the stop. So the proper answer when the biker is asked, have you been drinking, is,
Sir, I don't answer questions.
Okay.
cop's not going to like it. If you had any hope of getting a break for your speeding offense, that's probably gone once you start saying, I don't answer questions. But you got to understand, and we'll get into this in a little more detail, if you've been smoking weed, not today, maybe not even yesterday, maybe it was last week, you cannot get put in the position of getting tested in Iowa and a lot of other states as well. In this particular hypothetical, instead of the biker saying,
Sir, I don't answer questions.
the biker says,
No, sir, I have not been drinking.
Okay, so the biker says, I haven't been drinking, and thus is consenting to additional questions.
yeah, and guess what the next one is? The next one is,
Would you mind getting off your bike and doing some field sobriety tests?
Okay, not a great place to be.
there's only one proper response to that, and that is,
Is that a request or a command?
Makes sense.
and when the cop says it's a request, the biker needs to say,
Then I decline.
Okay.
but that's not what happened in this situation. In this situation, the biker gets off the bike and starts doing the field sobriety tests, but he's got some issues with his legs. The road's uneven, it's cold, it's dark, and he doesn't do great on the field sobriety test, but he's not impaired in any way. Yet now he's given the cop an opening because he's answered two things the wrong way and done something he doesn't need to do.
Okay. So the cop now has leverage to move into the next phase.
Yes. The next step is,
Would you mind blowing on the field sobriety test meter?
Okay.
again,
Is that a request or a command?
if the
Right.
cop says it's a request, you got to say that.
Then I decline.
Okay.
In this case, again, the biker knows that blowing on this little field sobriety test kit isn't going to hurt him in any way because he hasn't been drinking. So he blows on it, it blows zeros.
Sure.
But the cop has him doing not so great walking out on the road in some of these tests, and the cop books him on suspicion of operating while intoxicated.
So what's the next step on this one?
Well, the next step is now you're going to go give either a urine test or a blood test, in this case, a urine test.
Okay.
And remember, the biker has smoked some weed, not today, not yesterday, but maybe a week ago.
Okay.
So the urine test shows positive for pot, because pot will show up in a piss test for up to a month.
Right.
It's the waste product of smoking pot. It has no bearing on actual impairment, but, and this is a key in Iowa, it doesn't matter. At some point, the state legislature decided, even knowing that a positive urine test doesn't have any bearing on current intoxication whatsoever, they made a policy decision that if somebody's pulled over that has smoked weed anytime in the last 30 days, which means the test is going to be positive, we're
Right.
going to book them for OWI regardless of whether they are really impaired or not.
So there's a presumption in Iowa that if you piss positive, so to speak, for marijuana, even if you're completely sober at the time, they can still get you for an OWI, operating while intoxicated.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way the law is written. And it doesn't matter if you bring in an expert who says that has no bearing on current intoxication, because the law specifically says if the urine test shows this certain minimal level of evidence, it's OWI by law.
Now, let's say that we're all the way back at the station doing the piss test, right? Do you have to take that test?
Yeah, it's too late now. You've been arrested. And the reason you've been arrested is because you gave all the wrong answers out there on the road. You needed to lead off with, have you been drinking?
Sir, I don't answer questions.
Would you mind doing some field sobriety tests?
Is that a request or a command?
It's a request. Then, sir, I decline. But this particular biker opens himself up because he feels the compelling pressure to do what the cop wants him to do. But the reality is, if you're going to protect yourself, you just can't go there. You have to enforce your rights. And your rights are, you don't have to convict yourself of crimes. In other words, you don't have to incriminate yourself.
So you don't have to do the field sobriety tests unless the officer states so.
Correct. And the officer cannot properly require a field sobriety test unless they have a reasonable grounds to suspect that you're driving while intoxicated.
Now, does the breathalyzer at 0.00, does that hold any sway in this at all?
Not for a conviction for OWI when it's because of marijuana levels in the urine, because again, the statute is written in such a way that you are guilty of drunk driving if there is evidence of marijuana in your urine above a certain minimal level, which all that proves is that you smoked weed sometime in the last 30 days.
So even if they give you multiple breathalyzers, you go 0.00 on all of them, that still opens you up to the scenario where they give you a piss test or a blood test, you test positive for having THC in the system, and all of a sudden, boom, operating while intoxicated.
Yes, the 0.0 breath test doesn't matter at all. It doesn't help you out at all. You're screwed because of the piss test.
If you get to the station, they're like,
All right, we want a urine test, a blood test,
whatever. What happens if you say no?
At that point, you still need to say,
Is that a request or a command?
Sure.
It's a command.
and if they say it's a command, you got to do it.
Right.
If they say it's a request, you say,
then I decline.
Okay.
I don't consent.
but again, if they say it's a command, you got to do it.
Gotcha.
And if they're wrong about it being a command, the case will probably get thrown out.
So we get into, what do they call it again? Fruit of the poisonous tree, so to speak, with
Yes.
evidence there?
Yes. And it really, this whole scenario is just a perfect example of why you got to shut down the improper questions at a traffic stop right away. You got to remember these things, which are, I don't answer questions.
Okay.
Is that a request or a command?
Okay.
I do not consent.
Okay.
And am I free to go?
Okay.
Am I free to go is the one you bust out at about the 10-minute mark. If you're being asked questions, you just say, I don't answer questions. If they ask you to do something, is that a request or a command?
Sure.
If they want to search something, you say, I do not consent. Those are the things you need to remember at a traffic stop, and those are the only things you should say outside of giving them your driver's license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. And of course, if we're dealing with a firearm, that's a whole nother issue.
Sir, do you have a firearm of any kind in your possession? Yes, sir. Do you have a permit for that? Yes, sir. Would you like to show it to me? Right away, sir.
But those are the things you need to remember when you get stopped, because if you don't do that and you consent to extend the stop, they're searching. They're not being nice. They don't give a shit about your life. They're searching for something to convict you of, looking for you to say something stupid. Oh, I forgot the one where they say,
Do you know why I pulled you over?
Yes, yes.
so don't convict yourself.
No.
Just be cooperative, give them what you got to give them, and otherwise shut it down.
We can do this the easy way, which I can have you on your way in just a couple minutes, or we can do it the hard way. So if you're choosing the hard way, I'm going to go back to my car and radio in for the K9 unit. This could take easily an hour or more. Sir, am I under arrest? Not at this point, you're not. Sir, am I free to leave? I'm going to go back to my radio. Sir, am I free to leave? I'm going to assume that I'm free to leave if you don't tell me otherwise, and I'm going to leave peacefully.
Now, I believe we actually have some new business cards that we created to expressly help bikers in this scenario. So if you meet us at any of these various events we're going to be at all summer, ask us. We'll have the business cards. We're happy to give them to you. You can put them in your wallet, and they will have all 4 of those commands so that you understand these are the pieces of language you need to know when you get pulled over by an officer.
That's right.
Brought to you by the Biker Lawyers. Injured? Ride with us.